Pictures up.
Last looks. Rolling.
And action.
Welcome to the Last Looks podcast, Susie. Well, welcome back, I should say.
Thank you. Very nice to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I wanted you to finish the sentence for me, okay?
Okay, ready?
Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Susie, and when she grew up, she wanted to be...
An actress.
You did?
Yeah, big time.
I love
Big
this.
time. Yeah. For my
So
sins.
why?
Yeah.
Like, where did that first kind of... How was that seed planted?
God, I mean, I like at school, really early doors. I mean, I don't know where I started doing drama or anything, because that was obviously later. But you know,
Yeah.
I guess like there's a fine line between sort of just playing make believe and doing theatre and drama. But I did like dancing when I was a little girl. You know, I did ballet and all of those sort of really adorable things. So I always loved performing. And I loved dancing. I did it like until I was in my teens and stopped, kind of early teens. And then I was, by that point, I was obsessed with acting. So that was my focus. But like, you know, when I was like little, I had my cuddly toys and I wouldn't like, you know how you just play with your toys and whatever.
Yeah.
I would like direct my toys like it was a play. You know,
Okay.
like my dad has little videos of me like directing my toys and things like that. So I was always interested in like theatre, I think, like acting and directing in shows and stuff like that. So yeah, very early age, I kind of loved all of that. And as soon as I knew what theatre was, I do remember doing a Shakespeare workshop, I think, when I was like all good English children, when I was like 9 or 8, you know, those kind of like, those actors who kind of go around schools and teach, you know, like a play, and they do it in a really fun way for kids, that kind of thing. Like they came to my school, I think, when I was like 8, and it just blew my mind. And I just had the bug. I loved it. And right up until my teens and kind of early 20s, that was my goal. That was my plan, was to act, probably direct at some point, in theatre, film, TV, until I made the very smart decision to go behind the scenes.
Well, I mean, did you guys go to the theatre a lot? Like, was there anyone in the family that was in that line of work at all, or
not in the family? I mean, apart from, so my mum was the eldest of 4 sisters. My mum's Swedish, so I've got a big family in Sweden, and my youngest auntie, I mean, she was a dancer and choreographer, and she also did a bit of acting, so maybe a little bit inspired by that, but yeah, not really. Like my parents definitely not, and my brother definitely not. Like he's a computer programmer, he's quite shy, so like definitely not that. I was very different. But no, I think it's more that I always had that personality, and my parents they like the theatre, and I grew up in Sheffield, and Sheffield has a really fantastic regional theatre called the Crucible. So I was definitely exposed to theatre like from a young age, so it could be that. Yeah,
that's awesome. I am just remembering, actually, Susie, that when I looked at your IMDb, I did see that there was do you have a credit for something like for acting? Yeah, I do remember seeing that. I was like, ooh, and I see that every now and again when I look at my guests' IMDb's, and I'm like, oh, okay, some on-camera stuff as well as behind the camera. I love it. I love seeing that.
She's got skills. Yeah.
Well, it's just that, like, oh, okay, they're not, not shy in that aspect of things, in that way, which is very cool. I'm the complete opposite. I'm like, I mean, I'm doing this on camera right now, yes, but it's taken like 4 years for me to build to be able to do this.
Yeah, fair enough.
The thought of like when you're on set and you see what these actors do, and I'm just like, there's no way. Like, wow, just it's so incredible. There's just no way I could do it. It's so impressive to me.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think especially now I've had the privilege of watching incredible actors do their thing, I don't think I could have either. I think it was the right call.
Well, you never know.
To bow out. I'll leave it up to your listeners to do their own little Googling and find out what I did. I'm not going to brag about it. It's like so many people in my workshop know, and it's just really funny. And they'll be like, I knew I thought you looked familiar or something, which is really funny. But because it was just one, it was like a TV show, just like a British TV show in one episode as well. So not a big deal at all.
Yeah.
But but to be fair, that experience, and that was only one day filming, because it was, like I say, it was literally just 2 scenes in one episode. It was super easy. I had one day, and it was the only professional job I ever did as well. But I found it so useful when I became a makeup artist, because actually understanding what your actor's day is like, from being picked up at like silly o'clock in the morning in a car to go somewhere, you know, having a makeup test or costume fitting, and, you know, that kind of thing, and all the waiting around that you have as an actor. Like, it is, like, I know some people are like, oh, actors have it so easy, but actually, you know, it can be like really draining, and, you know, the paranoia of making sure you don't move your hair like differently each take, otherwise, you know, your hair and makeup artist can be really annoyed with you to have to keep reminding you and resetting it. Like, I had like hair extensions put in, and I had like fake piercings put on and stuff. It was really cool. But I remember, like, I don't know, I felt a lot of pressure, like, that I had to make sure I was doing my job for the director, for my fellow actor, and for the hair and makeup team. So I actually think it's given me an insight to the other side of it that I genuinely find super helpful in my job. So
yeah, absolutely. I think some people can kind of just not have that respect for the craft or what the actors are going through on a daily basis. Like, you're talking about them having, you know, there's a lot of waiting around and this and that, and it's just like, but they can't switch off. It's not like, you know, they're still, and especially if you're coming in as a day player, it's just like, I'm sure anxiety and stress is kind of up here, because you're like, I've just got to come in and like hit all these marks and quickly and efficiently, and hope everybody's happy with me. And it's just like, it's a lot of pressure. And then having people, because I assume when actors are starting out as well, getting used to people manhandling you, not like we tend to. You've got like a hair person, a makeup person, a costume person, the sound person, like everyone just like wanting a piece of them, and they, like, you know, everyone handles it very differently, but it must take some training to get used to.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And, you know, all the stuff behind it, the auditioning, like what it takes to get there in the first place. Like, I was so thrilled when I got the job, like, because it was my first one, you know, I was so excited. So it's like, it takes a lot to get there as well. So, you know, like you say, I mean, you know, I've worked a few times with actors when it's been their first job, and it's really nice. It's so sweet to be there with them, because you can see how excited they are, and, you know, hopefully it's the first of many and stuff. It's really cute. So yeah.
So okay, how does this shift happen then? Because it's same industry, but it's definitely a shift in direction. Massive, so how does that happen?
So I guess, well, so I was always very artistic at school. To be honest, I was very lucky. I had a really good school experience, and I was always very academic. I never really struggled with anything, if I'm perfectly honest, apart from sport. Hated sport, but in terms of all my subjects, do you know what I mean? I never had like, oh, that's my favorite. Like, I kind of love them all, and I just love learning, and I'm a bit of a nerd. So I always loved art, always loved art, and I was always quite good at it. But I never took it seriously. I just thought like, oh, it's just fun. And, you know, my parents were quite like, oh, the academics, that's what you should focus on, all the rest of it. So I kind of always had this idea that art was just something I enjoyed, but it was not something for me to follow through with.
Right.
And I guess because the acting as well was kind of my bug, so that took a lot of my focus. So when I came out the other side of it all with a bit of a crisis of like, I just don't know what to do, because I did well with acting. Like, I auditioned for drama schools, and I got to the final round of a drama school called RADA in London, where I was really excited about hopefully getting into. And at the end of that 4th round, I didn't make the final cut, and I was so devastated. But all actors talk about this, right? That you just kind of, well, it doesn't matter. You just, you know, gather yourself, and you just audition again the next year. Hopefully you'll get in, no big deal. But I suddenly had a bit of a like, I just don't think this is for me. And I had like an audition that made me feel that way, and I was like, I just don't think this is right for me. And one of my friends that I went to university with, because I did like a university degree in history of art initially.
Okay.
And we did loads of like drama there, just as a hobby kind of thing, like at the drama society. And she was like, look, you really love designing stuff for all of our shows, which was true. Like whenever I directed something or acted in something, it was always me that did like the costume design or the set design or very, very basic crap prosthetics, like whenever I could. Especially because Halloween was always my favorite holiday, like probably all of us. So, you know, I always wanted an opportunity to just muck around and have a go. So she was like, you seem to really like that. Why don't you just look into it? And I did. And I was very close to pursuing like theatre design. So like set and costume design.
Okay.
Really close. And then I went to an open day at Wimbledon College of Art where they did a course that I was interested in. And I was like I was buzzing. I loved it, all the rest of it. I was about to leave. And then I saw these students like puppeteering this massive like dinosaur puppet, like walking in it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it looked so cool. And I like said to one of the students, I was like, what is that? And what do they do? And they were like, oh, they're the technical arts students. And I was like, what's technical art? And they explained that they had a different course that was called Technical Arts and Special Effects.
Okay.
And it's a course that basically covers things like creature effects, puppetry, kind of prosthetics. And so, I looked into that, and it just all fired off and went tick, 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 tick. And I suddenly realized that all of the things I grew up with, like Mrs. Doubtfire, or like even later things, actually more contemporary to the time, like Pan's Labyrinth, just all of those kind of prosthetic makeups and creature effects. I was like, that's more my thing. I don't want to get paid for like designing a model box of a theatre set and then somebody else make it. I want to be responsible for like making things with my hands that gets put on an actor and that they can transform in. So I did more research, basically found a similar course at LCF, London College of Fashion, which was the one that I did eventually go to. Wimbledon wouldn't take me. I interviewed at both. How rude. LCF wanted me. And it was just, it just all slotted into place. It really did. Yeah. I'm also so my parents actually, they were both in medicine. My mum was a nurse and my dad's a retired neurosurgeon. So I'd also grown up around hospitals and medical bits and bobs, and I'd never been squeamish. And I genuinely think that's also part of what fascinates me about prosthetics a little bit. So, when something all just kind of, everything just clicked and it was like, hang on a minute, this sounds like my kind of thing.
That's awesome. I also love that your friend just kind of had that, I don't know, that insight to be like, you know what, I've noticed you liking and drawn to, and why don't you try this? Like, it's so good to have those people, really, I don't know, along your journey to just point things out to you and be like, you like this, or you're really good at that. And you're like, oh, yeah. And that kind of gets you on that journey, doesn't it? And that path of thinking along that line. So that's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad said something similar at the time, I think, where he was a bit like, you don't realize the things that you're good at because they're so easy to you. So you don't think they're a big deal because it comes naturally to you sometimes, right? And if you have a natural, not even just about ability, but just affinity for something, you're like, well, that's not special. Everyone's like that. It's like, actually, no, that is something to you. So you're right. I think it takes outside people to see it more than you, because
sometimes,
you're just like, well, that's just me, So my art teacher, I did actually years ago, I think it was when I did my first film, I emailed my old art teacher at school to let him know, because he was so devastated I didn't take art for A-level.
Right.
Because he was like, you really, really should. And I was like, I don't need to do A-level to be an artist. It's fine, whatever. And I sent her an email to say, like, you were right. I should have done it.
But still, you're doing all right, right?
I'm doing okay. But it was. I think it was probably nice for him to know that he was right, and that's where he saw me going. It's just I didn't at the time,
Yeah.
So
no, absolutely. So when you're in that moment, thinking back and having a clear idea of what direction you want to go in, where did you kind of see or think your career was going to go? Like, has it gone in the direction that you kind of thought it has, or like was going to, or?
I mean, I think more or less it probably has, just a lot sooner than I thought. I think that's fair to say. Because I mentioned because I did a degree beforehand in history of art. So I did that and I graduated when I was 21. And it was at that point I was trying to do the drama school thing. And then I sort of decided no. And I was like 23, I think, by then. And then I started on this other course, which is another 3 years. So I kind of came into it, not like super late, but, later than some. And when I was like during my training, because my training wasn't in makeup either, right? My training was in, again, it was like kind of puppetry, creature effects, animatronics-ish, like mask making. It was that sort of thing. It wasn't makeup at all, even though I knew I had an interest in prosthetics and prosthetic makeup, but we didn't actually cover any of that. So I initially remember thinking that I was like, right, my career is either going to go into prosthetic makeup and like creature effects, or it will be stop motion animation.
Right.
And when we were halfway through, because I love stop motion animation so much, and I made a few like crappy videos of my own back in the day. I do not have the patience for it. I have to admit, like it's a lot. I literally I did a little like cat plastiline model that I like literally just moved its head, and it took like a whole day, and I was like, this is not for me.
This is slow going.
Oh god, yeah. But genuinely, I think because halfway through the course in 2012 we did work experience as part of the course, and I think at that point, if I had found myself on some amazing work experience with somewhere like Arch Models, and I'd done incredible like stop motion stuff, who knows, that might have just been like, okay, I'm off, I'm doing that. But I'd already done some work experience with Sangeet Prabaker by this point, doing some prosthetics, which I really enjoyed. And I got a few more opportunities kind of around that time doing some stuff. And it was I just loved it. So it became very clear to me that definitely doing prosthetic makeup and creature effects was my thing, for sure.
Yeah.
I always loved every department. So sculpting, molding, casting, painting, hair. Technically application, though I hadn't actually done any because it wasn't in our course. But I knew I would love to do that at some point. And I was kind of trying to self-teach, and practice on my own, stuff like that. But yeah, in terms of where I am like now, I think I do seem to remember having one of those like, where do you see yourself in 10 years time kind of thoughts? Or maybe we were given a form or something, by the uni, fill this in. And I remember thinking, I was like, well, 10 years time, that's quite a way away. And I was trying to think, I was like, mid-20s at the time. So I was like, mid-30s, that might be a bit soon, but maybe I'll be heading towards thinking of starting up a workshop. Right. And I always thought to myself, maybe when I get to the age of 40, that would be a good time to like set up a workshop. Or maybe mid to late 30s, because I was like, I would have been in the industry freelancing for other people for 10 years by that point. It's a really good basis for having loads of knowledge and experience to then go out on my own. So I did kind of have that plan.
Yeah.
It's just I'm now 37 and it happened way, way sooner.
So how long have you had your workshop?
I mean, Red Girl's been around since 2017.
Okay.
I started doing independent work in 2015, but not full time. I was doing independent jobs as well as freelancing. 2017 was the first time, and that was just me as well. It was just me on my own in my own little workshop. Like I wasn't hiring anyone. It was just, I'd get a little commission here and there for like little things. So I didn't consider it a big, whatever.
Yeah.
I was working mostly for Conor O'Sullivan during that period. And I think, 2017 was a noticeable jump, because I was suddenly making like kind of proper stuff, proper pieces for makeup departments on like Netflix things, or, so it was suddenly felt very real. And I was definitely having to hire like fellow freelancers to help me with it.
Yeah.
And it was when I decided to name the company and basically decide like, right, I'm in, like I'm all in. This is a thing. It's not just a casual one-off independent thing I'm going to do. Like this is going to be my focus.
Yeah.
So I would say I guess it's coming up to like 7 years technically, which is kind of mad.
It's exciting. So just to get into it, where'd the name come from?
So I kind of
because I was expecting to meet a redhead, and I'm like, where?
Yeah, I know, that would be nicer, wouldn't it?
No,
I've wondered if I should, but like brand identity.
Yeah. But where did it come from?
Yeah. So I mentioned my mum's Swedish. So it's a slightly Swedish story in that it's inspired by a Viking. So the story goes basically in 2017 when I was looking for a name. Firstly, I know like plenty of other people do it, but I didn't really want to name the company after myself. Yeah. I didn't want it to be Suzi Battersby FX. I was like, I want it to be something more like open and not like just me. So I was like, don't know what. But anyway, in 2017, there was this article in National Geographic, which was about a Viking burial site, which basically had been discovered like years and years ago. And back in the Victorian times, a female archaeologist had looked at this burial, and it had like a skeleton in it. It had a horse skeleton, war paraphernalia, like weapons and stuff. And it was really grand. And it had always been thought to be this impressive Viking warrior guy. And she had gone looking at the bones. She was like, I don't think that's a man. I think it's a woman. And nobody listened to her, and everyone was like, don't be ridiculous.
Like, that's madness.
It's exactly. It was stupid. Go and make us some tea. So nothing happened. And then cut to like our time, and another archaeologist, also a woman, was like, I think she's onto something, and I want to do DNA testing on these bones to confirm it. And she did, and lo and behold, yes, it was a woman. And basically it kind of, I just loved it as a story that really represented the feeling of that glass ceiling sometimes that you can feel as a woman, where sometimes you just feel like, because it's not the normal thing and the typical thing, the assumption is that you just don't do it, or you can't do it, or it's just not possible. And at the time, when I started in this job, and when Red Girl sort of was developing, I wasn't aware of any workshops that were run by women. Like, I knew some women who were running workshops alongside, kind of like co-running them with men, but I wasn't aware of a woman doing it on her own. And I was like, why? Because obviously there's tons, and I'd already met, there's so many talented women like all over the industry, but none of them were like owning their own workshop. So that was a big inspiration for setting up the company anyway, just because I'm a strong believer in that if you want to see something change, then just do it. Make it happen. So that was a big inspiration. But I loved that story as just a representation of that, because it was like, there were these badass Viking women leading armies, and that's awesome. So in this article, I wanted to name it after her, basically, and I couldn't find that she had no name, and the village in Sweden that it was found in was impossible to pronounce. And I was like, right, let's not do that, because that would be a nightmare for branding. So
smart.
But it did say that there was like an Irish text from like the 11th century that spoke of this Viking invasion of Ireland back in the day. And it was written in like old Irish text, but it translated to this, it was talking about this woman who led an army, and it translated to the Red Maiden.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And archaeologists said that they think they know who this woman was, and she was called that either because she had red hair or because she was like extra bloodthirsty.
Yeah.
I like the latter.
Yeah. I see it now. All right.
So I was like, Red Maiden, that's cool. What about just Red Girl? Like Red Girl. And I liked having girl in the name because it's really just showing off the fact that there's female energy at the heart of the company, and that I am female, and I'm really proud of it. And, and I love the color red. It's such a power color. I just, I don't know, it all slotted into place. And then, because the little logo, the silly, like crazy lady that's my little logo, that's actually designed by one of my mum's sisters, who is an artist. She's a fine artist in Spain. And she does these incredible like embroideries and sculptures, and she always had these, it's always very feminist, her stuff. And in her paintings, often she would have this character that was like representative of just like your average woman, you know, kind of every woman or whatever. And it was always this woman in a red dress, this red dress and black court shoes. And I think I could ask her to maybe just riff on that design for me. Yeah. And we came up with, and again, it was one of those things, I had all these floating ideas and then they all just kind of slotted into place that seemed really impactful. And I wanted a name and like a logo that just made its mark of like, hey, we're here. Like, we're here. Hi. Like, you know, I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it works. And it's because it's simple as well. Like, you're going to remember it when things get a little long-winded and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, it's something FX. I can't remember what the
yeah
so
no totally
Girl is definitely, you know, sticks in the brain and you remember it, which is awesome. So in saying that, being female, running a workshop is, I mean, are you doing it differently in any way?
So yeah, I don't know, I mean, be it like whether I have a different attitude to it, like just by the nature of being a woman, I feel like it's impossible for me to answer. And also, you know, let's not generalize, obviously. Not all men are the same, not all women are the same, obviously. So that's, you know, that's difficult to answer. But I always had this idea that I wanted my company to be like kind of looking to the future, not just in terms of diversity and the fact that I happen to be female. Like, it's kind of neither here nor there. Like, I think it is worth celebrating, but it's not the be all and end all. But like, you know, I love having a diverse team, you know, and there is like, I mean, most workshops have really diverse teams, which is brilliant, but we can definitely do better. Because I always think you're going to get the best like ideas, you're going to get the best collaboration from a diversity of voices. Otherwise, if you hire people that are exactly like you and just like you, then you're just going to get, it's just an echo chamber, isn't it? So I love the idea of having a diverse workplace, but I also was really passionate about like trying to create an environment, a work environment that isn't burning people out, that isn't kind of making people's lives revolve around prosthetics, and that's it. Because, and it's not that other places do that, but I think the film industry as a whole is so demanding. Like, we all know this, the hours, the deadlines, like everything can be so tough. And I remember from my freelancing days that sometimes there were some places I worked where you would turn up at 8 o'clock in the morning, or well, before 8 o'clock really, you know, and you'd go until 6 o'clock officially. But you know, if you had done, even if you had done everything that you'd been asked to do, even if you'd done it well and there were no issues, sometimes it felt like when you got to 6 o'clock, especially as a trainee and a junior, that you felt like you couldn't leave. You know what I mean? Like, if you were the first to leave, it would indicate that you didn't care as much, or you didn't want to be there, you know? And I hated that feeling, because it's like, you know, especially when you've got like a 2-hour commute to get home or something, you know, you're already giving so much of your life to the job that, I don't know, sometimes I felt like some productions could feel that way. And again, it's because it's so demanding, and the deadlines and the turnaround, it's all so mad that sometimes, you do need to have that attitude, and you do need to stick around and work crazy hours. And that's fine to do every now and again, obviously, like, and it's a pleasure.
Like, when it's needed, like when it's a necessity, like this has to happen or we're screwed.
And there's genuine pleasure in that, you know, like as a team, you bandy together and you just make it happen, you know, like all the rest of it. You know, I've done so many days like that, and it's kind of all the sweeter, you know what I mean? Sometimes where you've recovered something from like when it seems like everything's just going to go wrong. But I don't know, I felt very strongly about like, I'm setting a company and I can just do it however I want. So for me, I love the fact that our standard workshop hours are 9 till 5, because why not? That's what the rest of the world does. That's so nice. So it means that everyone has time, hopefully, like in the evenings, to do what they need to do. They can cook dinner for their partner. They can, you know, go and, you know, go to the gym properly, or like whatever it is. But also, I like to not departmentalize too much. So the company, like the workshop's quite boutiquey, and I think I quite like it staying quite small and boutiquey, because firstly, it means that I get a chance to be like over everything properly, which is I really enjoy, and I get to make things. I never want to be just at a computer and just organizing and just managing, but it means that my team can do multiple departments, because that's what I love as well, and I think a lot of people out there love it as well. You know, there are plenty of people who are specialists and they're amazing and they are only happy doing those things, and that's awesome. But I know tons of people, and they work for me, you know, who really love taking something from start to finish, or, you know, doing the sculpt and then somebody else molds it, but then they're the ones who then run the pieces and somebody else hair punches it, and then both of those people take it on set. You know, it's a nice way to be, I think, and I think creatively you get a lot out of it. So I just like the idea of fostering an environment where my team feel fulfilled and happy, both in the workshop and out the workshop, and they don't feel guilty for like having a full evening or a full weekend, because burnout is scary, and I've seen it happen to some of my like dearest friends, and it definitely, I think it happened to me, and I just kept going, and I genuinely think it's taken me years to recover from it. So, and I think I think more of us are talking about it, which is brilliant, and I know that some productions are being quite receptive to it as well, which is really good. So I think if we can all together like try and foster that kind of, I don't know, that environment, so much the better, and all of our work will be better. Do you know what I mean? Like I know in myself that if I push past like 7:30 or something, if I'm sculpting something, I know that if I spent it would take me about 2 or 3 hours working at the end of a day to do something I could probably do in half an hour the next morning.
Right.
Because I would have slept, you know, I've had dinner, like, you know what I mean? I think it's diminishing returns sometimes when your team's having to work to that kind of crazy schedule sometimes. I mean, it's all very idealistic what I'm saying, obviously.
No, but
we have plenty of
good
times
to be,
where it's mad. But...
Yeah, of course. I mean, and it's good to be conscious of it and aware of it, and at least strive for it, that work-life balance, you know, because this industry can be all-encompassing, like when you're in it. And for you as well, like for someone like me, I don't have that business that needs to keep going. Do you know what I mean? So I will do a job, and yes, I will. It is pretty much 99.9% of my everything while I'm doing it, which is not healthy, but it's just how it works. And then I make sure I have decent amount of time off in between those jobs. But you don't really have that. You can't do that balance, so you need to find that balance somewhere else. So that sounds great.
That's very true. It's challenging, you're right, because when it's a company, and because we're always straddling multiple productions at a time usually, so and I'm always the person I'm always on, right, because, you know, whatever, whereas as you say, my team can decide to be like, you know what, Suze, I need to take a month or two off or whatever, but sadly I can't really do that. So exactly, trying to find a way that I manage the jobs and the workload and try and be smart about it. It's another mantra, you know, kind of work smarter, not harder, right?
Yeah,
like,
no, it's a good one to think about.
Because it's so tempting to just throw yourself into everything. And I'm still like that, to be perfectly honest, because I'm definitely a workaholic, and anybody who knows me knows that's the case. But, you know, I've tried to really develop and grow as the company has grown, to really try and just trying to make things better for myself and for everybody here, because we all do better out of it.
That's awesome. I love it. Yay! Yay! So let's chat about some of your career highlight projects, shall we? What are some that kind of, I mean, I know it's hard because they're all kind of, I don't know, they feel like your children, but what are some faves?
I mean, it's really hard. It is really hard because there's, you know, they all have their little things, like you say. I mean, I don't think we'll talk about it, but I have to say Golda, obviously.
Of course.
You know.
And if anyone wants to hear more about Golda, there is the Oscar special, and I think that's also just quickly why I was so drawn to you, Suzi, and was just like, I have to talk to her more about her work, was because you were so open and happy to kind of talk about, like, really get into the technical side of stuff with what you guys did for that film. and it was so refreshing. There didn't seem to be any, I don't know, gatekeeping, I suppose, that seems to happen a little bit. Like, people don't want to give away, it's like they feel like they're giving away some type of secret, but you were just very open to be like, well, this is what we did and this is why we did it and this is how we went about it. And it was just like, oh, this is so refreshing. It's so awesome to hear someone so passionately just give it all up and speak about it. And it was so interesting. So I was just like, oh, I've got to talk to Suzi again.
Oh, well, that's so nice. Thank you. I'm pleased you said that, because I think with Golda, like the whole, the sort of the Deadner thing, and that the thing that I'm so proud of with that makeup, and why I think it did end up being quite successful. It's just, why would you keep that to yourself? Because if look, firstly, some people might be like, I don't want to do that. That sounds horrible. But, especially because applying them is a nightmare. Because they're so soft, for starters. But, like, if somebody in the industry hears it and is like, that's interesting, I'd love to try it. Like, if they might improve on it, right? They might be like, hey, I tried your thing, but I found this problematic, so I developed this instead, and it made it so much better. That's making me better. That's making all of us better, right? Like, if it can help one person and inspire somebody else, that's what progress is, isn't it? It's sharing ideas. And that's what I love about our industry and our community in general, is that I think most people aren't super gatekeepy. And I love on Instagram when people show little techniques or products they found or little hacks they've discovered, and because it makes us all better. So I just think, why on earth would you ever keep that to yourself? Because it's going to make us as an industry better. It's going to, in terms of prosthetics as well, we're constantly being told, ooh, are you worried about CGI? Are you worried about whatever? And it's like, well, no, if we can all bandy together and keep producing work that looks incredible. So we're all helping each other by doing that. And also, like, if I don't know, this might be a bit mean, but I feel like if you want to protect some secret thing that you've come up with, for me, I'm a bit like, just raise your game, like, if that's the one thing that makes you special, that's not enough. Like, we're creative, innovative people by nature, and that's what the job is. Like, you're going to have umpteen other ideas. That's not going to be your one idea, I think, personally. So, like, and I think, it will inspire you to think of more things.
Absolutely.
So Golda definitely was a highlight for lots of reasons, because it allowed me to execute something that I wanted to do, and obviously the platform that we had with Helen was, obviously life changing. So I can't not say that. But in terms of other jobs, I mean, I will say, kind of just before Golda, we did a job called Litvinenko, which was a TV drama in the UK on ITVX, which was a new streaming service, actually, that show was part of the launch for. So it was actually quite a big deal. And it was on David Tennant that we did this. So Litvinenko was about the real story of Alexander Litvinenko, who was an ex-Russian spy who got poisoned by, the Russian government, evidently. And a really extreme case of polonium poisoning. And he famously basically solved his own murder, as they say, because he knew who did it, and he kind of told the police before he died. And it was, because I don't know how global it was as a story, but back in the day, it was a massive story in the UK. Like,
when did it take place?
Like early noughties. I want to say like 2004 or something like that. And it took place at so the poisoning happened at an Itsu in the middle of like central London, supposedly, and he was staying at this hotel in Mayfair, and and then basically he just started to deteriorate all of a sudden, and he literally died, I think 4 days later, something like that. So it was really quick. And basically it was David Tennant was just it was a 4-part episode. He was in the first episode, and it was the setup of the whole thing, and he was the title character. So all eyes were on us. And Sammy Kinnenmuth was the makeup designer, and she got in touch with me after being recommended to me by lovely Jess Heath of Jess Effects. yeah, basically we had, it wasn't necessarily a likeness makeup, but it was doing a proper silicone ball cap, really bespoke, blacking out his eyebrows, and to make him look like he was suffering from this poisoning. And it's a highlight for two reasons. Partly because, like I said, before Golda, it was actually the first makeup that I had done with Red Girl that was on such a well-known actor, and that it was so the focus of the show. It was going to be the poster. It was going to be the main sell of this thing. So it was like all eyes on us, and we couldn't mess it up, you know? So that pressure was like exciting, but it was the first time I'd had that. Whereas before, I'd always done that as part of a bigger team when I was freelancing for other people. You know, I'd done that for plenty of big actors before, but this was my baby. So it's like, whoa, okay.
It lands on your head.
Absolutely, yeah. If it's not right, and David, you know, David was an executive producer on it as well. So like, if he wasn't happy, you know, and obviously I can't upset Doctor Who. So that was part of it, but also it's a real story, and there were real victims. He died, which is awful. His wife and son are still around. They were really involved with the project.
Oh, wow.
And this man suffered like one of the most horrific deaths you can imagine for somebody, you know, similar to like what they did on Chernobyl and stuff like that. It's really nasty stuff. And I wanted to make sure that I did it justice. And, you know, and so Sammy and I, we were really sensitive in how we handled the design together. And, you know, she got really good information from the pathologist who actually did the real post-mortem on Litvinenko. So we got like the real info. So I don't know, I loved the opportunity to really delve into the details, because as you can probably tell, that's really what I like is facts and evidence and details. And it was such a special project, and being on set, having the privilege of watching him do what he can do. He's the most incredible actor. You'd see him transform like during the application, like the last hour of the application, as we painted, he became Litvinenko, and it was so special to watch. And the sort of sequences when he's like dying in the hospital, and we were filming it in a real kind of, you know, disused hospital for the set. And I mean, I don't know, to be fair, I was emotionally charged because it was about a year after I'd lost my own mum. So I was still in a very sensitive place, but
of course,
watching the crew show, I just started to cry, and I kept it together like a professional. But then when we watched the monitors, like I did for some of them, I did just have to walk out the room. I was so moved. It was it was a really special job, like a really special job. And like it looked gorgeous on the screen. I was so happy with it as well. So yeah, that's really special, really, really special job.
That's awesome. I love that. I want to watch it now. I haven't seen it. And that story just within itself is quite fascinating. So
yeah, no, you should. It's really good. But it was quite funny because it launched, like I said, it kind of launched ITVX, and in because I mean, you know, in London, right, like around Waterloo, there's a big IMAX, and a huge IMAX screen that's like massive. Like building that's massive. Yeah. And they had like a huge poster of him in the makeup up there, and it was, I mean, God knows how many meters tall. I saw it when I was in a camp. I was like, ah! It was like terrifying. But it looked great. It looked great. But I was like, ah. So that was pretty cool. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It's difficult to pick. It's difficult to pick. I do want to give a little plug for a film that's going to be. I mean, it sounds like I think it will have just come out maybe by the time this comes out. But it's called Bird. It's written and directed by Andrea Arnold, and like I really can't say what we did because I think it will ruin the film for people. So I won't go into it too much. But it's one of my favorite jobs to date, easily, because partly because the crew and the whole team were just so brilliant. Like working with Andrea, like she's such an auteur, and like the story was so special to her, and like having that connection with the director and knowing that part of what we're doing is telling a story that's so personal to her, like was so special. And I know that when our makeup on our actor was on set for the first time, like she cried when he first, you know, was on set, and that is just so special to know. And we were tasked with doing something that we hadn't had to do before. So there was loads of R&D, and Ashra, and who you've met, and Raj did a fantastic job, like R&Ding this stuff for me, like whilst I was working on some of the other prosthetics on it with the rest of the team. Like it was one of those lovely jobs that comes together where we were given the blessing and the trust to just do what we thought was possible. We didn't have a huge budget, you know, but we made it work. It looked fantastic. Robbie Ryan was the DOP, and he was so helpful. And I've been such a fan of his for such a long time. So to get to work with him was like absolutely incredible. And like production designer Maxine Collier, who got me on in the first place, was lovely to work with. And Lisa Mustafa was the makeup designer. She was fantastic to collaborate with. And yeah, it was just, you know, there's lovely films that just have a special place in your heart. Like it has to be a highlight. It's just frustrating I can't tell you more, but I will ruin the surprise if I do. And our actor was a dream, just an absolute dream to work with as well. And yeah, I'm really excited for people to see it. Can't wait.
Oh, that's very cool. Well, yeah, we'll definitely have to be looking out for it. So when you are just now kind of talking about that research and development, is there a specific way that you kind of approach character design, like with all the parties involved?
So I guess, I mean, it does depend on the project, doesn't it? I think sometimes and especially as a prosthetics designer, because sometimes, you know, we're brought on by a makeup designer, and it can be quite hands off, because it can, you know, it might be quite simple, right? And they might be like, oh, I just need this. And it's like, okay. And I almost feel like my design is very limited in that, you know. But yeah, usually I find it really collaborative, and I love where possible just going back to the script. I find like all of the information's there. I don't know about other people, but I'm not terribly good at just having ideas out of nowhere. I need a launch pad. And yeah, I love like kind of evidence-based, reference-based facts, little pockets of information that I can springboard off. So yeah, for me, I love seeing the script, even if I'm only stepping in to do just one thing. If possible, I would love to read the whole script from start to finish. I want to know what the story is. I want to know what the character's journey is. I want to know what the point of the scene is. And obviously at that point, love chatting to the director about what exactly they are wanting to get. Because, you know, take something like a swollen eye, right?
Yeah.
One of the most bog standard things probably you could ask to do with prosthetics. But it depends, you know, is it a swollen eye that's, you know, in a sort of climactic scene in a boxing match where they've won against the odds? Is it a scene where someone has been beaten up because of like racial abuse? You know, is it from like domestic abuse? Is it from like a pratfall? You know, like the you could say like, oh, it's a swollen eye, but the circumstances around it really matter in how that design is then going to come about. It's, you know, along with, you know, real references of now what would the bruising be like at day 2 with that impact? You know, I really loved getting super anal about, well, it's only 2 hours later, so, you know, it wouldn't have changed color yet, you know, like that kind of thing. I love being, you know, super specific about that, unless obviously artistic license. You know, if you want to, say, like,
someone's going to be like, yes, that's facts. But what I want to actually see is
exactly. Yeah, I can be convinced. But I love at least starting with that for design, you know, and like I don't know, like knowledge is power, you know, and it's like if I know what I'm talking about, whether it's the story or like the reality of the situation behind the story, then I can make better decisions about form, color, placement, you know, like how much to dial it up or dial it down. So I kind of always go there. And also the actor, to be honest. I mean, depending on what it is, I love for the actor to have as much say in it as possible, because ultimately, if they're not on board, the prosthetics, I just think they're always going to look crap. Like if they're not comfortable or happy with it, you know, like it really relies on them selling it sometimes. And, you know, I really want my actors to be happy with it. Maybe it's because I used to be an actor, so I'm a little bit biased, but I just think it's super important to have that relationship between you two being like flawless, because otherwise getting them to sit down for like several hours of a morning is a hard sell unless they're really into it. So I love my actors to be part of that design process where possible. But yeah, I don't know. I also, in terms of, I don't know, this is maybe not design, it's more build, but I love getting my team's input as well. Like as long as I'm not, you know, as long as it's open from a kind of NDA point of view and I can talk to them openly about something in early stages, I love getting their input where I can, because, you know, more brains are better than one, you know? So they might have ideas that would never occur to me, and that kind of thing. But it's interesting because we did this documentary called Secrets of the Neanderthals for Netflix and BBC Science in 2022. It came out earlier this year. And that was fascinating from a design point of view because, well, firstly, actually, there wasn't because it was documentary, right? So it had these little snippets of drama where they wanted to kind of just show like reenactments, basically, of like, this is how Neanderthals would live and how they would fish and how they would whatever. But they were based on real fossils. So they were real Neanderthals that existed. So I was getting this information from actual archaeologists as well. It wasn't just the director and the producers. It was also literally experts who work at the Natural History Museum. Like it was cool. And you know, we had to create like this sort of family that they'd written, like an older male, an older female, and a younger male and a younger female and a child. And also because it wasn't like a typical shoot, they didn't have, and there weren't any kind of regular characters, they didn't have a hair and makeup designer. So it was mine 100%. It was the first time I had to properly design hair, which I feel like, especially in front of you, I feel like it's very not cool for me to say I designed the hair when I'm not a hair designer. But it was my say,
it all
you know,
works
which is
together.
cool.
You're creating a character, so
No, but it was it was a baptism of fire because I had to rely on my fantastic team who knew much more about hair than I did, because I really don't know very much other than what mine does, and that's about it. But you know, we commissioned some wig fronts to do for like lowering the hairline, and we sort of smushed them together with cheaper wigs to kind of make them work and put dreads in them and all sorts. And you know, it was really, really fun, like full body painting, makeup and hair design, prosthetics, like, but all based in evidence and based in like scientific fact, which I just, I loved. I think it was really a really satisfying project from a design point of view to have experts where you, when you can find them and when it's appropriate to use them. Like I'm so down for that. You know, give me all the books, all the experts, everything.
Yeah, that's awesome. So there's been a couple of times throughout our discussion that you've kind of hinted on budgets and how it might not have the greatest budget. And I think we all kind of come across that often in this line of work. So, and having the workshop as well, like tell me a little bit about how you kind of deal with that when you only have so much money or so much of a budget, but of course they're expecting the world from you.
Of course.
How do you deal with that? How do you approach that? What kind of creative strategies do you use to get through that?
I mean, I certainly have. I mean, it's happening like less and less actually, which is good. It's helpful, but we still work on small budget things, absolutely. And I mean, kind of early on, I found, especially because when I transitioned from freelancing to having a company, I had to kind of start from the bottom again. Do you know what I mean? Because you don't suddenly, unless you're very lucky, but you don't suddenly go from, because I was working on like Alien Covenant, Star Wars, whatever, like as a freelancer, I don't suddenly, I'm designing it now, you know? So I was doing a lot of short films, music videos, like a lot of things that just didn't have big budgets. And the thing that I would always tell people was that, look, if you don't have a big budget, but you have all these big ideas, just condense them down, because especially for something like a short film, right? if you have, I don't know, let's say there's 5 things you want to do, but you've got £2,000, right? And you want to do all of them or something. It's like, why don't we just do like 2 of those 5 things and do those as well as we possibly can with that money, rather than all of them, because it will end up making your film look cheap. But if we do even just one thing really well and you shoot the shit out of it, it will make your film look really expensive and accomplished. And I kind of learned that like naturally on the job by doing lots of shorts just to build up experience. Yeah. So when it came into doing, you know, more legit things that just, like you said, just sometimes they just don't have the budget. Like a good example actually is a TV show called Somewhere Boy, which we did, which was on Channel 4. It's a fantastic show. And they needed these sequences where there was this like terrifying monster, basically. And they wanted head to toe creature. And you're like, cool, what's the budget? And it was like £5,000. Yeah, it was only, it was £5,000.
Like, budget? What do you mean?
Oh, and time. It was like 3 weeks as well or something. And it was like, okay, so we don't have a lot of money here. And they needed it for like a few days for like some really quick like sequences where it's like this terrifying thing. And the director had some ideas. He didn't really know what he needed, but basically I was like, look, I'm never going to be able to do full body prosthetics. That's obvious, or a creature suit. Obviously, that's not even worth discussing. Yeah. So I just condensed it down. It was like, look, what's going to be the most frightening? I mean, luckily, it was meant to be humanoid, so that was a good start. Yeah. But in terms of once we've got the right casting, so I was like, look, find me somebody who is, you know, like quite thin but like toned. We can really accentuate their you know, their shape with paint. And at the end of the day, if we do most of it just with makeup on the day, the prosthetics can be quite minimal. So I deliberately just designed it so that we just had one piece, and it was like a full face, kind of finished almost 3/4 to the back of the head, and finished the rest of the back just with a vinyl ball cap. So it was really simple, and just do the rest with paint. And we made it so that like his eyes were like hollows, so we didn't have to do lenses. They just looked like, you know, in infinity, kind of just like black holes. You know, we gave him some of that mouth effect stuff to give him like a black kind of mouth, and super basic like nails that we made really quickly with, you know, some Sculpey. You know, it was just super basic and simple, but because it meant that I could focus my energy on just one piece, and it was one sculpt that had to be really impactful, and then the rest was just a makeup job. And it made it manageable in the time, and it made it manageable with the budget. And thankfully, the production were fantastic. Like, they found such a brilliant actor who was such a... And bless him as well. He was so up for it. Like, he knew what was needed. And, you know, I explained to him the concepts and stuff. He was like, okay, cool, I'll do what I can. And he restricted his diet for like 2 or 3 weeks just to, like, help really, you know, accentuate everything as much as possible. He was so on board as well. So... yeah, I think for me, it's always like, where possible, like edit, reduce, and try and channel your energy and your money then into the thing that matters. Like, you know, if you talk to a director and be like, okay, you've got this scene where, I don't know, whatever it is, something is happening. Do you have to see it? Or is a sound effect going to be enough? You know? Yeah. Is the look on someone else's face going to be enough? Because if it is, then we can move that money into this instead, and it will look amazing, you know?
Yeah. I mean, helpful when you're working with a director who knows the plan of what they are going to see.
Yes, that is.
It's like, I don't know until I get there. It's like, oh God, okay. Yeah, that's expensive. Yeah. That's what that is.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm always like, please show me a storyboard. Please show me a storyboard. And yeah, so few of them do. And you're like, oh, it would be so helpful if you did. Especially because, like there's more than one way to skin a cat. And I think with prosthetics, like you could do the same gag in so many different ways. But if you know how they're going to film it or how they want it to come across, you can choose the best option, and it might save the money in the long run. But as you say, they often just don't know, and then yep, that's when it starts costing money.
And I mean, we talk about all these wins and achievements and all that type of stuff and how great some things have gone. But I do also like to touch on sometimes what mistakes we make. So can you kind of think of anything that was a bit of a like, oh God, I fucked that up moment so far in your career? Because I feel like everybody has one at some point, but we normally don't like to talk about it. But I think it's nice to talk about it, to kind of be like, this is what I learned from it, or this is how I kind of fixed it or got through it. So what you got for me, Suzi?
It's so hard to answer because obviously, like you're right, everyone's got that story. I mean, like from a workshop point of view, like there's definitely been times when, you know, I've mixed up the wrong silicon, or I've, you know, I mean, it's funny when you say that, oh, fuck, that moment. Like I definitely had a moment when I was working for Connor years ago, because I was like his main silicon technician, basically.
Yeah.
And I was like pouring some silicon into a tube to fill up like a matrix mold. And I had forgotten, because I was rushing, I'd forgotten to put Mod Rock around it to like support it. And it was a huge load of silicon I was putting in, and it just like started to fall apart. I had to just like grab it with my hands to stop it, and it was like spilling over my hands. And I did just source it myself. I just had to one-handed at reach, and bear in mind I'm a 5'3", you know, tiny person with not very long arms, but like just casually, quietly, one by one-handed, just Mod Rocking it together. And I mean, it was fine, and I definitely learned. Well, I learned never to forget that in the future. But no, I definitely learned like don't rush from that for sure.
So just stop for a second, think: have I done all the steps? Yes.
Yes, exactly. But I don't know. It's funny because I was thinking of like a mistake that I made earlier this year that was really funny. I don't know what I've learned from it necessarily, other than maybe just don't do it again.
Laugh.
But yes. But we were making a penis prosthetic for a film, and yay. And because we're so desensitized by the mad things that we do, like we got it all packed up, you know, we had it in our lovely, really useful boxes, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, got it all sent off, and it was getting picked up by a courier, and then just like gave it to the courier. And at least I didn't, I think one of the team did. And then it just dawned on me that that it was in a see-through box, and it's obvious what it is. And it's going to the poor makeup designer is going to receive this, and it has her name on it. And you're like, oh my God. I mean, thankfully, it didn't say the job, it didn't say the actor, thank God. But like, I was just, can you imagine? I was so embarrassed, and I like called her immediately, and I was like, I've done something so stupid. I'm so sorry. Because we must have picked up, I think there was just a little look on the courier's face of like, what is happening? You know, what is this mad? What? So that was a very silly mistake. But I think
because you know those stores that sell all of the sex toys and all that kind of stuff go like above and beyond to like package all their things. So nobody's gonna know what it is. And
exactly.
You're like, here's a clear box with a dick in it.
That's the thing, like with a dick and a merkin, you're welcome. I'm like, what the hell? I don't know. It's just funny because, like I say, it didn't. To me, I was like, it was just another prosthetic. What's the big deal? Who cares? You know, it's just you know, it may as well have been some cuts. It may as well have been some whatevers. But no, actually, well,
that's fun. You gave the courier something fun to talk about when he goes have a pint later.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
So no major life lessons there, but definitely some embarrassing mistakes. I stacked it in front of everybody after being told on set one day. I was doing a music video for Sam Smith, and I stacked it on. We're outside in this sort of like quarry, and I'd had to watch literally a safety video about being careful on the rocks. And I was like trying to sort of like, you know, like walk run because I was like lagging behind, and I had my big makeup bag and whatever, and I literally just stacked it in front of everybody, and it was so embarrassing.
I'm the person that watched the video and fell over.
And it's like, yeah, literally. And at the time I was like, oh God, I've got to watch this stupid video. So I don't know. Again, no lessons learned, but definitely made plenty of mistakes to really discredit my cool vibe, which does not exist.
Nah, cool vibes are overrated. Don't worry about
Yeah.
it. So, what do you find most rewarding about what you do?
That's hard, isn't it? It's all rewarding because it's just
Yeah,
great, isn't it? I mean, we're so lucky to do something we love.
yeah.
I mean, like I said, when somebody is brought to tears by what you've done, like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
amazing. But yeah, I think, I don't know, I get really satisfied, I think, by being given a brief that on the surface sounds like it can't be done.
Right.
And then you find a way to make it happen,
Yeah.
and especially when it's through like innovation. Because I mean, it makes you feel really clever for starters. You're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm a genius. But I don't know. I think that's the fun of it. Like, I don't mind doing something again that I've done before, right? Because you can always improve. And as I've said before, like with the Swan and I, whatever, it's never the same. It's always different, and I'm always going to get that creative satisfaction. But when somebody asks me to do something that sounds like it kind of can't be done,
Right.
and then you manage to do it, it's just, yeah, it's so cool. Like from a technical kind of mad professor kind of way, like that sort of the R&D that you get to do on something. Like I did a job, which I don't think I can say what it is, unfortunately, but it's not out yet. But it was, yeah, we did it last year. It was a TV series, and one of the actors that we had to do these prosthetics on, their skin was so sensitive that they literally couldn't have a single alcohol-based product anywhere near their skin.
Yeah.
And for prosthetics, that is obviously a massive issue because it meant no telesis, it meant no acetone, it meant no Illustrator, like alcohol-based colours. It all had to be water-based, but they still needed prosthetics, and the production company were very demanding, and I had to look flawless, and I had exposed edges everywhere.
Yeah.
So I basically had to come up with something that I'm proud to say did work. That I basically just kind of found a way that would work for them, where I made the prosthetics for them using firstly IPA-based cat plastic, so it was more fragile. Right. Super thin, like running them as thin as I could dare go. Which the molding techniques that we do here kind of allows us to do that, which is really cool. But then I found that like a mixing medium that I would otherwise use for like maquillage kind of colors, like some of their kind of cream mediums. I was testing loads of different things. I tried Vaseline, like that didn't really work, nearly worked, to disintegrate it. But I tried this cream, and just a little bit of this cream, just rubbing it onto the cat plastic after I'd applied it and glued it down with Pros-Aid. It just softened it loads. And like that was a really successed way of doing prosthetics that is water based basically, and wasn't going to upset their skin. And I had to I used like water based airbrush paints, thinned them down to like ridiculously diluted, like like you would use Illustrator colors to build them up, and just spattered like really delicate kind of stuff, and just layered the colors just like you would with that. It was just much slower, but I just had to like dry in between every time. But it looked amazing, and it looked great, like that, plus and using kind of just maquillage just for final touches and stuff like that. But it looked brilliant, and I was so proud of myself because in the initial, like the first test I did, you could still kind of see the edges. I was like, oh damn it, not quite there. And the actor happened to be like in their 20s and had flawless skin as well, which obviously really helps. But I was really proud because it was like, obviously it's not something I plan to ever have to do again.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't for that, they wouldn't have been able to have done the makeup, if we hadn't found a solution. So it was, that kind of thing I find super satisfying, because it's like,
I think too, Suzi, it's there's the odd people out there that would just be like, it can't be done. Do you know what I mean? Like they'd just be like, I cannot be bothered trying to work that shit out. And they'd be like, yeah, I'm not the right person for the job. Like, next.
True.
also
true.
just the fact that you just grabbed that with both hands and like dug into it, like, yep, I'm gonna figure this out if it fucking kills me, but it's gonna
Yeah,
happen. So
yeah, yeah.
well
I don't
done.
know. I get something out of it myself, you know. And
Yeah.
again, you know, maybe, you know, I like if I can do that for the actor, like if they tell me like, look, I can't have this product or I can't whatever, we all know that internally we're a bit like, oh no, that is so
Yeah.
annoying because I know it's the best product for this. But you know, yeah, it forces that creativity. And luckily for that, I did have a good budget and I did have the time.
That's
If
good.
I probably wouldn't be talking so fondly about it if, you know, if I had only had 3 weeks to execute it, but I did have the
Yeah.
time, thankfully. And yeah, like it allowed us to, you know, yeah, to make those allowances for them, which I think was so special because then it meant that they had a really difficult scene to do that day, and I didn't want them being distracted or upset by the prosthetics in any way because again, I don't know, I know that prosthetics are a bit of a burden for people to wear, and I feel like it's our job to make it as enjoyable and comfortable as possible. And I know it sounds silly, but I mean, it's part of the same question, I guess, about satisfaction, but I get so happy when an actor tells me how good the prosthetics feel to them, you know, not just how it looks. Like, I've had people tell me, like, oh my God, this is so comfortable. Like, I'm so surprised. Like, you know, or it's just nice because you don't want them to then go on set being like, oh, I'm aware of this thing on my face, when their
Yeah.
focus should be doing the scene and expressing and all the rest of it. So yeah,
Yeah.
like
I'm
I
the
find that
same
super
with
satisfying.
wigs. I'm the same with wigs. I don't want, yeah, I always, whenever, especially when a stunt person is just like, oh my God, that feels so secure, but it's comfortable. Like,
Mm.
thank you. That's not causing me pain. And it's just like, well, it should never cause you pain. That's
Yeah.
a concern. Um, but it's just like, it is, yeah, it makes me feel good that with my actors, that they feel like it's their head of hair, that they feel comfortable and confident enough to touch it if they want to and treat it and flip it
Exactly.
around and do whatever it is that they need to do as that character in that moment, and not be like, oh, but what if, you know, it's just
Exactly.
yeah, it feels really good because you're just like,
Yeah.
oh, it's a help, not a hindrance, which is really nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and what's one piece of advice that you've been given at some point that really stuck with you?
Um, this is funny. This like is so easy for me to answer because I feel like I hear it in my head even when I don't mean to hear it. So when I was at uni doing my training in well, not prosthetics, but yes, whatever technical effects.
Yeah.
One of our technicians there was Jeff Portas, and
Mm-hmm.
Jeff's like a legend in the industry, and you know he's responsible for Hellraiser, for you know he did he was, you know, co-founder of Image Animation, blah blah blah. So he was this amazing guy, and yeah, he taught actually on the makeup course that I wasn't on, but he did teach us a few things as well, like life casting and stuff like that. And his one of his phrases was "know your materials," and like it always stuck with me because he was always like, any answer to kind of anything that we do, whether it's, you know, how to make something or like fix a problem, you need to understand what your materials are. Like, don't just use them and that's it, you know, end of the day. Like, think about like the processes of how it cures, like what is its setting time, what is the perfect temperature, what are good quantities, what happens if it's a big amount versus a small amount, you know, how does it react with other chemicals, like all of that stuff was so beneficial to me as a student, and it made me really anal and fascinated actually by the materials that we use.
Yeah.
um, because yeah, especially when you're doing prosthetics, you sort of feel like a bit of a mad professor half the time, as well as an artist. You know, you're kind of straddling like the fine art side with the, you know, technician side. And like I definitely think a big reason why I'm capable of running a team and running a job is that I do know my materials, and like the ones that I'm not familiar with, I get to know them very, very well. And I love, calling up, Tom at Neil's Materials and saying, tell me, how does this work? What's going on with it, and doing research even, really basic research, because obviously I'm not a chemist, but I think it's so important because obviously products can go wrong, they can misbehave, and especially like we've said, when you're rushing and stuff, maybe you have done something wrong, but sometimes you haven't, you've done everything right. And if a deadline's looming and the product's just not behaving, if you really know it, then you'll know what to do to get yourself out of that hole. And honestly, to date, I don't think I've ever had, which is a big claim here, but I don't think I've ever had a sort of product like fuck up that I haven't been able to fix in the moment, because I've known what it needs. Like, oh, moisture helps it cure faster. Oh, heat makes it cure faster. Or I'll put a barrier up quickly, which will allow that bit to set, and I can fix this problem tomorrow. Whatever it is, I think really knowing your products is key. Don't just blindly like read just the first bit of the instructions and that's it. I think it's such good advice, because we are what our materials can do for us, and it helps you innovate. I mean, when I worked for Connor, like I was very lucky actually, because Connor is you should totally have him on, by the way. Connor is like known as being a bit of a mad professor, because he loves like coming up with ideas and stuff and innovating with products. And I think he could tell that I liked that as well. So on his teams, when I wasn't doing like the bulk of silicon work, he would often give me just R&D time to just play around with materials and stuff. And so he helped nurture that in me as well. And I don't know, I think it's a big part of the problem solving element of being a makeup artist, that you're given a brief. It may not exist in reality, number one. And even if it does makeup exist in reality, it may have never been done through makeup before. So it's up to us to, figure out those things. And I think the first starting point is really knowing what you're working with, because then you can know how much you can push it and play with it,
Absolutely. And for anyone listening who maybe that doesn't inspire you, which it should, I think just as a for safety, you should know what the heck you're 100%. Using. Because it always blows my mind in the States, well, in LA anyway, with the local 706 union. It's like, to get into the union as a hairstylist, you have to be certified, so you have to have done training. To be in the makeup side of it, you have to not be colorblind. So, and I'm like, but makeup people work with so many chemicals that they're putting on people's skin. Like, why is there not at least some sort of, I don't know, something that you should learn and know? So it is left up to the individual to understand the materials and products that they are using. So it's incredible advice from one end of the spectrum right through to the other. So that's awesome.
No, very true. And actually, as the sort of the head of the workshop here, I'm responsible for my team as well. I'm not going to ask somebody to use something I don't understand. That's because you're right, from a safety point of view, from understanding, it's not right. I think you should really know what you're putting on people and what you are getting your team to work with. Absolutely.
So what one tool or product would you never want to work without?
This is hard. I want lots.
But if there's like just tomorrow, if I walk into your workshop or at your station when you're doing makeup and took something away, what would you lose your fucking mind over?
Okay. Can I say a tool and a product?
Of course.
Is that allowed? Okay, because the product's easy. Product's easy because I feel like there's loads of different products I'd be able to substitute out if you took something away. But like my super reliable like sealer that I love that isn't actually meant for prosthetics is Urban Decay Up All Night. I love it so much. It doesn't have any oil in it, so it's really great for prosthetics, and it gives like such a natural like dewy finish. I really really like it, and it's really light and stuff, and you can reapply it during the day. So I'm a big fan. I discovered it on Golda, and it's been in my kit ever since. And it's like, if I don't have it, must have, because otherwise things look just ever so slightly too matte, and it just doesn't look real. And you just need a little something, and I really like it. but yeah, tool is really hard. So I mean, it's hilarious because there are some scissors that I'm obsessed with, to the point that I've probably bought like about 20 of them over the last like 5 years, because they eventually get dull and you can't sharpen them.
Right.
So in a sense, it might be these scissors, which is really stupid. So I think maybe a more interesting answer for you is, I love these tweezers. I think they're meant for soldering, but they have like, so they're kind of, I don't know, they're like this long, and they, at the ends, they're round. They're like little circles at the end. So they are amazing for like pinching like edges of prosthetics, like especially like around the eyes, because most tweezers, even ones that are slightly rounded, they're still kind of pointy. And these ones, they're proper, like the end of them is two blobs, they're two little circles. And it means that they're lovely, because they're lovely and curved. You can hold them like, you can hold them against an actor's skin and it's not going to be uncomfortable. And sometimes, well, like I say, Golda was a good example, because we had our pieces, the cap plastic was so like tiny and there wasn't much to hold on to anyway. So they were really essential for something like that. But yeah, especially if you're doing something where, because I like to pre-cut my edges for anything around the eyes. I'm sure a lot of people do. And around, when you want to get a really snug fit and you can't hold it with your fingers, you can't hold it with your nails necessarily. So like, having some tweezers is really helpful. But I always get really nervous when I've got, what are otherwise quite sharp tools, I think. It's quite nervous, especially when people are stepping on and, so I found these tweezers actually when I came over to LA in 2019. I think it was at Monsterpalooza. It was one of those stalls that has loads of crazy different tools that are from industries that don't belong in makeup, like crazy things. And I found these tweezers and I was like, these are amazing. And I've used them ever since. Like they've never left my kit. And I use them in almost every application.
So if someone was trying to find them, what do you think they'd look for? Like, is there a brand or?
So no, they weren't a brand, because like I said, they were just these loose tools, just like all over. Like it was almost like a kind of like a like a yard sale kind of setup, just like loose. So because it's funny you said it, because I did lose them temporarily and I freaked out, because I had no idea what they were. And I was like, oh my God, my amazing tweezers. So I started Googling like rounded tweezers, round end tweezers, circle tweezers, to try and find it. And that's why I think they might be soldering tweezers, because that's what came up. And I bought some before I found my old ones. Okay. And they're not as nice. Okay. So I'm glad I found my old ones. So I don't know, maybe soldering tweezers might be what people should Google. But like they'll see they have like like I say, it's almost like two little, it's like a little ping pong bat. Imagine that at the end of the tweezers. Yeah, wow. They're great. They're brilliant.
Awesome. Yeah, and who would you want to hear on the podcast? I feel like you said before, but you can expand on that.
Like I say, I think look, Connor's got some fantastic stories. I mean, you'd have a great chat. But I think like from a prosthetics point of view, I would love to, because I met them for the first time when we were in LA at the start of the year for the Oscars, and the team behind Twilight Creations, who are in Berlin. So Tamar Aviv and Jörn Seifert, I think is how you pronounce his name. They're both just so lovely, for starters, like such lovely people to meet. And I've just admired their work for years. I think their prosthetics are just like so stunning. The attention to detail is just gorgeous. So I would love to hear about their process. I'd love to hear about how their company came to be. And like I say, they were just so lovely to meet in person. And I would just love to hear more about them, to be honest.
That's awesome. I've also been following their work for a little while. Probably not as long as you, but I think I first came across them when I was watching Dark, the Netflix show. And I was just like, oh, who's doing all the stuff on this? And it's just like, oh, Twilight, okay. And then I started following them and seeing all their bits and pieces. And it's just like, there's something pretty beautiful about their work. So
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah,
That'd be cool.
yeah. Your list is probably insanely long of people to get on. So.
Yeah, but also, you know, sometimes it's just tricky to nail people down. It's just like, come on, just give me a couple of hours.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it, honestly. I don't know how you do it. You're so busy.
You know, you find the time, but it's also so many people are just like, oh yes, I want to hear from that artist. I think that they'd be amazing, and that artist is sitting there going, I don't think I've got anything interesting to say, and it's just like, I'm pretty sure you do.
Yeah,
I think you do. Because everyone's journeys are so different, and they see things so differently, and it's just a nice little, I don't know, insight into their world and how they've got to where they get to, and
yeah. I mean, I thought similarly, to be honest, because I feel like I don't know, because I feel like I still feel so new, because you know, because I kind of am. So you know, it feels like there's a hell of a lot more to come.
Yeah, and but that doesn't mean you don't have something to say, or that you haven't been through, like, had a journey yourself. So, and that's one of the biggest kind of pieces of feedback I get about guests, is so many people are just like, I want to hear from, you know, the younger ones coming up. I want to hear from those that just started. I want to hear from those that, you know, aren't so well known or haven't had the, you know, accolades or accomplishments or whatever it is. And it's just like, okay, I'm getting there. There's so many people, as you say, but it's just so there is a want for just hearing people's journeys, which is very cool. I'm happy to document it.
No, I agree. I know you're right. It's like I say, and also because our industry is so varied, and you know, like, it's not all the big budget massive films and massive TV shows. There's all, like you say, there's all the small stuff as well, and there's all the there's so many incredible people that we're lucky enough to get to meet in person, and there's obviously so many people who listen to your show that are maybe waiting in the wings, or they've only just started, or maybe they're just about to go study or something, and they don't get that pleasure. So there's loads to be inspired by. I wish your podcast had been around when I was training. That would have been amazing.
Me too. Me too. And before we wrap up, Suzi, are you ready for a quick fire round of questions in 30 seconds?
Okay, I'll try. Yeah.
She's like, you didn't tell me about this.
Sure, let's do it.
Okay. You ready?
Okay.
Would you rather shoot days, splits, or nights?
Days.
Have you ever been fired?
No.
What is your go-to snack from Crafty?
Oh, I like nothing. I don't eat. Just coffee.
Room temperature water or iced?
Iced.
Favorite season?
Autumn.
Favorite curse word?
Curse words?
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's got to be cunt. It's so good. I love it.
How wonderfully English of you. I love it.
I love cunt.
Yeah, it's mine too, lady. It's mine too.
It's just, you know, love it.
Has so many uses.
I mean, it's just, it's always appropriate.
Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Suzi. It's been awesome talking to you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much for having me. And I love that we've ended it on cunt. So it's perfect.
It's my favourite.
Oh my gosh.